The Cult is the first episode of season 7 of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Kenneth Shapiro, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. I didn't know what to expect from this. I'd seen the show before, but a long, long time ago, and I could not remember what was going to happen here, because at the end of the previous episode, and I guess this is a spoiler for the previous episode, Marie and Debra are still not talking, and they dragged that out for quite a few episodes, and I really didn't want this to be continued into the new season. But actually, the episode works really well. It starts off with Ray eating a pickle. Robert then comes over and he's having a good day, and this is because Gerard got him into a cult. Not that Robert sees it as a cult, but he's in a cult. And Debra and Ray are concerned about Robert. But Robert's response, which I love, is, and I quote, "Like the camera, I use negatives to develop." I love that. That's brilliant. Obviously, not when that negative thing is a potential cult, but nevertheless, I love the quote. And then he goes over the road. Marie and Frank find out that he's in a cult, and they freak out. Their response was absolutely fantastic. It was so brilliantly done. It was beautiful. I kind of wish we'd seen their initial reaction, because we kind of cut to them mid-response, but it was still really thoroughly enjoyable. And I guess cutting to them already responding in itself is also quite funny. And then Debra and Ray go over the road, and this is when it's established that this feud is still happening, because Marie leaves the room, and it's obviously quite an uncomfortable moment. And to help Robert realise that this is a cult, Ray agrees to go to one of the meetings. And it turns out they kind of knew that Robert was Ray's brother, and they used Robert to get to Ray to get this somewhat successful, well-known writer to be part of their cult. So even when Robert's in a cult, it's still all about Raymond, which is extremely awkward. But Robert didn't seem overly fazed by that. He still seemed quite happy with the situation. And Ray then goes home in an absolute panic. And Judy comes over. I love Judy. And they're going to have an intervention. And then Marie comes over with cake as part of the intervention. I do like the fact that even though there is this feud between Marie and Debra, they're still willing to go into each other's houses, obviously for the sake of the other family members. I think had they not done that, it would have been quite hard to deliver certain aspects of certainly this narrative. And then Robert turns up and quite quickly realizes what's happening to him with the intervention. He tries to leave, and they wrestle him to stay, which is a great bit of physical comedy there. And then Judy demands that Ray, as Robert's brother, speaks to him. And there was just something in Robert's face that made me think that this was all Robert's plan. And I was confident that I knew how the rest of this episode was going to unfold. And I was wrong. Well, no, I was right to an extent, but I didn't predict everything. And I was genuinely taken by surprise. So that's the point. When Ray approached Robert, that I started to think, hang on, this is something Robert has fabricated to bring his family together, to get Marie and Debra to talk. And then when Judy told Frank comes over and asks what's going on, and Judy says, and I quote, they're trying to, quote, reinforce the family thing, that really cemented my belief that this was Robert's plan all along. And then Robert says, a short while later, a path to inner peace and harmony can clearly not be found in this family. Which again, it's all laying it on thick, just really suggesting that really something else is up here, and Robert is up to something. And then he's about to storm out and leave the intervention, and Debra and Marie chase after him. And I think it was really significant that nobody else did, that the two people to chase after Robert into, I think it was the kitchen, are Debra and Marie. I think that was really, really important. And Robert is saying, this isn't working, we can't do this, you can't even talk to each other. And Marie yells, yes, we can. And she and Debra just look at each other, I guess partly shocked by Marie's outburst response, and they just start hugging each other, and they're overwhelmed with emotion. It was a really beautiful moment. And then something happens. Because at that point, I thought, this is great. I worked out what was going to happen. I'm not usually very good at that. I don't usually predict what's going to happen in episodes. Granted, because I try not to, but sometimes when it's obvious, I take pleasure in working things out first. But I didn't see this coming. Because yes, Robert was part of the cult to then try and get Marie and Debra to talk to each other. But Ray and Judy and Frank were also all in on it. They were aware of the plan. And I didn't see that coming. And I thought that was really, really brilliant. I did think Marie and Debra were about to get annoyed. They both, particularly Debra, have a habit of flying off of the handle without really considering the person's true intentions. But I think they were just so relieved to have the weight of the feud lifted from their shoulders. They didn't even care. They weren't bothered. And I really thoroughly enjoyed this. And it ends with the whole family getting ready to have dinner around the table. And it's rare that we get the whole family on screen at one time. And it was really beautiful. It was really nice. Do I think we needed 3 episodes to build up to this? No, I don't. I think 1 would have been enough. Maybe 2 I could get behind. I don't think we needed 3. I really don't. But this is a really satisfying conclusion to this part of the story, and it was just an absolute joy. And as I said, it was good fun once I realised or predicted what Robert was doing, but at no point did I think Ray, Frank and Judy were also in on it. So that was that was a really great reveal for me. And needless to say, I think The Cult is a solid episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, a really strong start to season 7, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this season.